Hey everybody, we're back with another Father's Day movie month review. It's relatively gonna be a simple batch this year. Um, the first movie I'm gonna be covering is Die Hard with a Vengeance, starring Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson. I've been sitting on this for quite some time because I reviewed. If you haven't checked out my first two Die Hard movie reviews, they're up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm very close to reaching I'm 8 subscribers away from the 400 subscriber goal, so I'll be doing like a Hot Ones challenge video once that goal is met. But in the meantime, I'm collecting questions from everybody, so at any one of my YouTube videos or up on my Twitter at TalkativeCarl, you can send me questions. I'm going to collect a set of 10. Then some point in next month, I probably should reach the goal by that point. I'll have like the hot sauces, and then I will definitely start making the video. Also check out my Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/talkativecarl. If you want to further support the channel financially, there's very cheap prices. The lowest tier is at $1, where you can choose a particular review that you want me to movie, comic, TV show, or just a general topic. You can, for a $1 tier, you can choose any one of those. And then Patreon members get first viewings. And also, I just started the Street Fighter 6 walkthrough, the World Tour walkthrough. Part 1 is already up on the YouTube channel. But if you want to watch me go live and chat with me, it's www.twitch.tv/talkativecarl, where I'll be going live. Matter of fact, there's 2 reviews I'm going to be covering today. After I'm done also like an hour and a half from now, depending on how long the other video will go, I will get started on playing more Street Fighter 6 and maybe squeeze in some time from Destiny 2, the Lightfall campaign. Anyway, after, because I don't know if I'll go through any other Die Hard films unless it's like personally requested through the Patreon thing. I will do it then. But I just wanted to cover at least the first 3 Die Hards, because honestly, they probably should have stopped at 3. But I don't hate Die Hard 4, but they really kind of pushed it, and I was like, that's where we saw like a bit of dip of the quality from what we're used to, and they should just left it alone after that point, because it was okay, but you'd be kind of pushing your luck. That's what I was afraid of with like the John Wick franchise. Like, dude, you doing a 4th one? You're kind of pushing your luck with the like typically, these kind of movies, like you're lucky you get like 3 good ones in a row, but like you managed to pull off a good 4th one. But it's like, okay, let this kind of thing die. You already talking about doing like a 5th one if Keanu Reeves is so inclined to, but it's like, dude is almost 60, and it's like, God, we cannot keep pushing these guys. But after this, the rest of the month for Father's Day movie reviews will be all the Indiana Jones films. Yes, and that's including the terrible Crystal Skull, which I haven't seen since like early 2000, or at least because I only saw it twice. Once in the theater with my father back in the day, with my father and my brothers, and the second time was on when they eventually got it on DVD. That was like the only 2 times I've seen it. Each one still probably terrible, but maybe I'll get some level of things to point out that's good in it, maybe. But it's been a while. It's on, all of it's on Disney Plus, which I didn't even know that was like a Disney related thing. But I guess you know, it was a Fox property, so uh whatchamajig, the Disney bought it out, so they just acquired it. So didn't expect it to be on Disney Plus though. And also we'll cover like the 5th one that's gonna be coming out, the last Indiana Jones. And I'm treating my father for Father's Day. You know, it comes out a week after Father's Day. Me and my brother's gonna be treating our father, all going out to the movie together to go see the 5th Indiana Jones film. Because I grew up watching all the Indiana Jones movies with my father, not in the theaters. They was already on, like, running on cable TV when I was growing up in the 90s, you know, as a kid. So I watched them all along with my father. Third one being my personal favorite. And a little known fact, my father, because Indiana Jones is a junior, my father came up with the idea of naming me after him because of the, you know, because he was, you know, because Indy was a junior, so he'll have like a me as a junior because I'm his firstborn. Anywho, that was the plan. You know, so the X-Men movie is gonna be put on pause. For those reviews for the movies be put on pause. We're only halfway through them anyway, but they'll be put on pause for the time being until next month. Well, kind of sort of next month, because next month is July, and I got, well, luckily I only got like 3 things I want to review for the July Independence Day movie reviews. Is the first 2 National Treasure movies, and then the National Treasure TV show, which is on Disney Plus, all of it on Disney Plus. And I watched the National Treasure TV show, and I definitely had some thoughts. I really wanted to talk about it when the show was over earlier this year, but I was like, no. Since I'm going to be reviewing National Treasure for July, I want to put a pin in this until July, and then for me to go binge watch the 6 episodes, because I don't think they're making a second season. You know, it's like I said, I have some thoughts on it, man, and I'm gonna wait till then to really, you know, break it all down for you guys. But anyway, Die Hard with a Vengeance. We got returning of Bruce Willis as John McClane, Jeremy Irons as Simon Peter Krieg, Samuel Jackson as Zeus Carver, Graham Greene, Joe Lambert, Colleen Campbell, Connie Kowalski. But yeah, that's pretty much like the main people. But we got Larry Brigman as Walter Cobb, Anthony Peck, Ricky Walsh, Nick Wyman, Matthias Targo, and Sam Phillips as Katya. But funny known fact, if you rewatch this movie, the character of Ricky Walsh apparently was in the first Die Hard film, but as like a different role entirely, like very sidelined extra kind of guy, where he's, you know, at one point he's like behind Carl Winslow, the black cop in the first movie. So it blew my mind when I found that out many years ago. And I gotta say, even though Hans Gruber in the first sorry, I got the phone, I mean not the phone, the window cracked open because it's warm. I need to get some air, and I'm already like, you know, blood pumping my, kind of warm because a couple of hours ago I came back from the gym, so my muscles gonna be kind of tight, by this time by tomorrow, and I gotta work. But I really need to go to the gym. Alan Rickman is to this day considered one of the greatest actors who just really made a villain stand out in terms of like movie villains. And Hans Gruber is honestly up there in like probably like in the top 10 greatest movie villains of all time, and I agree. And for me, he's right up there. Aside from maybe like the comic book type of villains, Hans Gruber is right up there with like the T-1000, Freddy Krueger, in terms of like greatest movie villains of all time. Like, no joke. Matter of fact, in the comments below, let me know what movie villain do you think is like probably like the greatest like creative villain of all time, because those definitely my favorites. I'm not like a huge like Freddy Krueger fan, but I have total respect for a creation like that by Wes Craven. But Jeremy Irons, the Simon character is, it rises. In my personal opinion, I think he rises to that level, because I think I could be wrong. No, I'm definitely wrong. I think the first time I was privy to Jeremy Irons would be in the Lion King movie where he plays Scar. But I think this would probably be the second film that I recognize him in. But I did not know the name of this guy when I was a little kid, but I recognized the voice. And he plays this so spot on. I get more into it as I go on with the review, but he is like very good and deserving on that same kind of spot as Hans Gruber. You'll know why. I mean, if you're familiar with this film, you know why. But in case you're not familiar with Die Hard with Vengeance, if you haven't seen it before, please, there's a spoiler review, but please check out that movie first, then come back and you can hear my thoughts. I don't want, if anybody's not really privy to Die Hard films, they should definitely check them out. At least check out the first three. First four. I'll give it 4 because when I watched it, I don't remember hating it. But stop after 4. God, he's like an incredible actor. And of course, like, this kind of breaks away from the same gimmick the first two had, where, because you'll think like every Die Hard movie gotta be set around Christmas, but this movie moving forward in the franchise breaks away from that gimmick. And you know what? Speaking of like villains out of the Die Hard franchise, honestly, I think Simon and Hans Gruber are probably the only 2 Die Hard villains that anybody can even remember. In the second film, I'm pretty sure people vaguely remember the villains, but the most notable one would be was it Edward James Olmos? That was I don't want to confuse him with like another Olmos guy. John Amos. Like Edward James Olmos. I don't know why I do that. I do that almost every time. John Amos was probably, because he's the father from Good Times, so of course everybody's gonna remember him. But he wasn't like the main villain there. But if anybody remembers any villain from Die Hard 2, it will be him. They probably should have just made him like the main bad guy. And the it's the thing. I think even though he was a bad guy, he can still like admit like he likes John McClane. He doesn't have no kind of grudge against him. He's in it for like the money, but it's like a shame, McClane. I kind of liked you. It's just like because it's like it's like game recognized game kind of situation, and uh 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 John Amos's character of Major Grant uh actually have some respect for John McClane and the things the cowboyness of him and everything, and he gets stuff done, he gets results, he got like total respect for him, and actually does feel bad he actually have to take him out, he fails, but uh but the other bad guys don't really care much for John McClane. But then again, we only remember the two primary ones because the others are so bad. Anyway, we're back in New York. We're not anywhere. Well, we got back. No, the second one was set in Washington, I think, because it was snowing. Was it Washington? Uh, yeah, DC. But because in the second movie, he lived in LA with his wife Holly after they reconciled briefly in the first film, and he transferred from New York to LA to because that's the whole thing in the first film that he was too stubborn to like so be a supportive husband because he's like a New York cop through and through, and it's like set in his ways and things like that. Of course, I go over everything in the first two Die Hard films. It was like one of the first few movies that I reviewed for the channel. But uh, they reconcile. He transferred to the LAPD, and it's a shame that we don't really explore much of that, like his time. And matter of fact, they could have made some kind of graphic comic or something for Die Hard just to explore the in between years of John McClane, because, and I should have brought this up earlier, because currently right now, Bruce Willis, I think it's probably been a while now that he probably retired, but he is going through like the early onsets of dementia, which is very sad. And not that anybody's counting the days, but the family even brought up that this going to get worse, and eventually Father Time's going to do what Father Time's going to do. And it's a shame because we all pretty much grew up with tons of Bruce Willis films, and Die Hard being his most notable one and landing him into stardom. And there's a bunch of other movies I want to review that has Bruce Willis in it. One of which being a Disney film called The Kid, which I really want to do, but probably will say that for next Father's Day movie month. As a matter of fact, so second here. So by the because like if there was like a comic detailing how these two try to maintain the relationship during the events of uh 1 and 2, and how the falling out happened between 2 and 3, and his co-chorus with uh getting back to New York. So by this point he's like drinking and he's on a suspension, god knows why, but like I said, I think a graphic novel or some kind of comic detailing these kind of events would benefit whatever comic company we want to handle, maybe like Dark Horse or something, because that seemed like a good idea, because there's so much you can do to carry on with the Die Hard kind of universe, like a good kind of action comic, the story of John McClane, like Die Hard, the story of John McClane or something like that, or even like a detailing the events of how John McClane became who he is as a cop, and how you met Holly in the first place. That would be an interesting kind of thing, as a matter of fact. There's so much to explore. You can't continue on the movies because everybody who try to do a movie after 4 always bombs. But I think a good comic book writer can like really make some pretty good stories, and could continue on with kind of like Bruce Willis's legacy in a way. So there's an explosion that went off at a department store in New York. Then the precinct, that the one police plaza that John McClane works at, gets a phone call. The police captain, Hobbs, gets a phone call from the guy named Simon. Simon says, I need John McClane to wear this sandwich board with some writing on it and go out to Harlem and just stand there. And so they went, found John. He's like, got a bad hangover, and John's confused. Like, what's this got to do with me? And nobody knows. Even though you should be cops, and you probably should be like really probably getting on that. I watched enough like Law and Order, when things like that, where like it's clear a bad guy got some kind of vendetta against a particular character. They, work the case at 2 different angles, trying to figure out who this guy is, and then go along with them in the meantime kind of situation. So when John ends up in Harlem, he has to put on this sandwich board with a racial slur on it, the N-word. And all the while, we also are introduced with Sam Jackson's character Zeus, who, in case you don't know, the role of Zeus was previously thought to be given to Lawrence Fishburne, but some stuff came about that he couldn't do, so they gave it to him. This isn't the first time though. Fishburne was also offered the role as Jules from Pulp Fiction, but something happened where he couldn't do it, so they offered the role to Sam Jackson. 2 movies of which really, like, other than maybe Jurassic Park, really kind of cemented Sam Jackson, especially Pulp Fiction, really cemented Sam Jackson in the history of movie cinema. And Sam Jackson's a total, so much fun that Sam Jackson became like you find out that he's such a total geek himself, where he grew up reading comic books too. So of course, when he jumped at the chance to play Nick Fury and get involved in all this stuff, pretty much being like the patriarch of the superhero community. So we're introduced to Zeus, who is talking to these kids before they head off to school, and you get a little bit of his, mindset. He's, very intelligent. He used to be an engineer, and he works at this convenience store. He also had, drove a cab for a little bit. You can see all that coming, these skills come to play along, as they carry along into the film, because I believe they wanted to get like an entirely, since we're in New York, we gotta get an entirely set of new characters here. And Bruce Willis always has kind of like pal tagging along through these films, because we had the first two films was Carl Winslow. Of course, that's not his name, but you recognize him, you know what I'm talking about. You got Carl Winslow helping John out through the first two films. But not necessarily would be a bad thing, but like the thing, like the writers involved, because this movie was directed by John McTiernan, who I believe like did the he did like the first movie and then the third movie. The second movie was done by Renny Harlin. Oh, they only did 5 movies. I feel like they done 6. So just don't waste your time with the last one. The fourth one was fine. It just wasn't memorable. Anyway, so the one kind of and this is me speaking as a black person, the one thing I really think, maybe it's just the way it was played, how things were in the world, during the 90s, especially after the events of Rodney King and everything like that, because I'm pretty sure that was on top of mind on a lot of people when this movie was being written and filmed, because the Rodney King beatings was around 92, so I'm pretty sure they didn't get to work on this script until maybe 93 leading into 94. Well, they probably started shooting in 94 and they're working on the script by 93, so I'm pretty sure it was on top of mind. So racial relations was very heightened, and given what happened today, doesn't feel like much has changed since 92. But we were all more socially, consciously, and empathetically aware, more so than we were back in the early 90s, where even though people were a little bit more, we're still kind of sensitive, but there's still racial barriers were still getting through, try to break through. Now it's kind of any kind of racial crap being pulled, it get posted, and things get moving slowly but moving, because the optics and more people, especially in my generation, but generation below mine and just a step above mine, will be more more sensitive to the plight of people who are hurt by anything that's racially violent. But anyway, the only con I like to say I have is just the fact that they really kind of lean probably a little too hard with it, even though understandably so. But it's not that because Zeus is not a one note kind of guy, but he takes everything. I won't say everything, but most of his dialogue seems to be so racially charged, like a wannabe Malcolm X kind of type of guy. And it's he's saying things like, like this is a white man's game kind of attitude. It's like, uh, it kind of slows down the film for me. It's like, he was trying, like the director is trying to make a entirely different movie, and like Die Hard got thrown into the mix. But he sees John, even though the cops are watching him like 10 blocks down, but Zeus steps out, tries to intervene, because as he puts it later in the other scene, in a later scene, if something happens to a white cop in Harlem, then it's gonna be a bunch of white cops with itchy trigger fingers ready to rain hell. So I decided that's why he decided to step in. So he asked him, like, are you on something? Like, is your problem? Because you're about 2 seconds from these group of teenage black kids from seeing this, and there will be a problem. And John explains to him, like, hey, you heard about that bombing that happened earlier today? He's like, yeah, well, the guy who did it said if I don't do this, then they're gonna blow up another place. So that's why I'm here. And it's like, because the reason I like this, because if you ever watched like the Batman the Animated Series, one of my favorite comic book villains is the Riddler, and Simon really leans in. And that's why I feel that that's how you make this is how you make a good. Well, they kind of did with Matt Reeves' Batman, but it's just I don't like, because people say they gotta make it realism, but it's like he just wears a green. He's a guy with a green suit with, you don't have to be filled with question marks, but he can like have like a tie with a question mark on it, or a hat with a question mark on it. That's all you need. It's just it adds to like the flair. And it's like, embrace the comic book in this. Don't let me get off on a tangent. But I'm just saying, like, embrace it. You're making the Riddler look like a gimp in a Batman movie, and this doesn't. It's like the actor is fine, and it's like you just put him in a green suit, and that's the Riddler. None of this Zodiac crap. It's like I'm tired of trying to, directors like, I gotta make it grounded in realism. God, just embrace it already. We all know what we're in for. It's a comic book movie. We know what we sign up for. We don't I don't go to an Iron Man movie expecting Journey to the Center of the Earth documentary. Okay? I won't feel bamboozled when I go to a comic book movie. So I expected some silliness here and there. Simon carries himself like what the Riddler should do. If you want to write a good Riddler story, or a TV show episode, or a movie with the Riddler as a main character, have him play similar to how Simon is in this film. It's like very Riddler. As a matter of fact, I remember like the TV show The Batman. I really like that Riddler in there too, where matter of fact, there's an episode of the 2004's was in the second season, matter of fact, of the TV show started in 2004, but The Batman, the TV show, second season, they introduced the Riddler, and I remember the episode is called Riddled, and the lady cop that's helping with Batman, it's kind of like the Montoya character, and the Riddler is placing these kind of bombs across Gotham, and she has to get, of course, Batman's in her earpiece giving her the answers, because each bomb has a different particular riddle, and she had to get to each bomb in a particular time frame. Of course, she had the benefit of using vehicles in order to get there pretty fast, but she got to use her own car or a motorcycle, because she don't have time to wait on anybody else. But it's very Die Hard 3 if you look at it, if you really put two and two together. So that's why I figure Simon, that's why I like Simon so much, because I love when you're doing crime dramas or something like that, and there's a villain that has the kind of mentality where you gotta solve these puzzles and stuff like that, or something happens. I mean, not like Saw or anything like that, like that torture porn crap. I'm talking about crime dramas with like these Riddler type dudes. I really like that. So, uh, the teenagers see this, and well, I won't say teenagers, but like young adults, because they're not in school or anything like that. They're just hanging out on the street corner, and they about to jump on Zeus and uh John McClane, and Zeus takes John's pistol and like aims it at the dudes until John's backup arrives and gets them both out of there. And so we're back at the precinct, and the psychologist there, you know, brings up about this kind of psychology of this guy, and he points out, like, you know, this guy is very angry, and it doesn't even matter that he, you know, it appears like money doesn't matter to him, and it's like he's doing this to hurt you, make you suffer, and then ultimately, you know, kill you. And they're trying to figure out, like, you know, like, okay, who previously has like any beef with John before, and it's like, oh, it's a long list, and we gotta find ones named Simon that have some kind of knowledge of explosives. And because their explosive expert shows up, very stupid thing to do, but he shows up with a found explosive with these chemicals, and obviously these are kind of a rare type of thing, because this particular chemical agent has to mix in order for it to be you know, dangerous, but separately they're fine. And this dude takes like a paper clip thing and the edge of it to, like, you know, like a piece of tissue, and swab both liquids and tosses it, and it causes like a little blip of an explosion underneath one of the chairs. It's like a little spark thing, it's like one of those pot rock things in 4th of July you throw to the ground, but it actually has like a bit of a concussion force behind the light. But that was stupid and dangerous. He got yelled at, but he probably should have, you know, got suspended for that crap. But Simon calls and he wants to talk with John and Zeus. And I love, God, Sam Jackson's amazing in this. Bruce Willis, Sam Jackson, and Jeremy Irons are like the highlights of this film. These three in combo is just a perfect storm. And it's like, you know, like Simon's like, like, what's your name, boy? Like, don't call me boy. And like, you interfere with a very well laid plan. Well, you can stick your well laid plan up your well laid ass. That always stuck with me. That's just the line delivery from Sam Jackson when he curses. That's the thing. In like the MCU films, it's like they would not let Sam Jackson just say, you know, like the F word, and they like cut it off at the end of Infinity War when he disappeared. But it's like, oh my, it's like, you know, yeah, maybe in the Secret Invasion TV show they'll let Sam Jackson actually like say one curse word, has to be the F word. But the first F word they actually used, they didn't give it to Sam Jackson, they gave it to Chris Pratt in Guardians 3, in like the car scene. So they had to go, I'm trying to remember which thing they gotta do. Oh, they have to get to this particular payphone, Otherwise, there'll be another explosion. So, you have to take, they got to do it in a particular time frame, but they got to take a car there. They can't like use like a helicopter or make any kind of alerts or anything like that. Just like these two. Zeus doesn't want to get involved in this thing, but thanks to some prompting by John, who's playing, like, this guy doesn't care about skin color. He lies to him about where they found that bomb they was testing about the liquids, saying like, oh, they found it in Harlem. They kind of found it in Chinatown. But he actually needs him in order to carry this on, because for some reason Simon like feels so inclined to get this guy involved. Like, there's honestly probably no really need. But anyway, they head off to try to get to the payphone at a particular neighborhood. Although the spot they have to get to is so cold, because this is around like early in the afternoon. So there's a bit of traffic. I'm not sure like how New York traffic is. It's like, from what I understand, it's hella traffic. And Zeus says like, oh, I used to drive a cab. The way to this particular street is through this direction. But John decides to go literally through the park, even though that logically that shouldn't be feasible given how many people are in the park. But he goes through Central Park to avoid all that needless traffic to get to this particular payphone. Then he used, because they're driving like a taxi cab right here, they commandeered a taxi cab, and he used the dispatch to fake a police getting shot in order to get like the nearest ambulance to show up. Well, no, I think I'm getting the scenes kind of mixed up. They do use that in order to drive behind it so they can like avoid all this. People have to stop for the ambulance, so they got to maneuver to get through all this needless stuff. But anyway, they finally make it to the payphone, and this heavyset woman is on the phone, and they answer it, and sounds like, like, what took you so long, John? I was like, look, this is New York traffic. What do you expect me to say? I expect you to say there was like a fat woman, like, taking up the line. And then, I love this moment because the tempo picks up. It's like, this dude's watching us. They always got to me as a kid. It's like, when I first watched this, I was watching this on TV. I didn't watch it in the theater. I was a young kid, and it really kind of struck me because, like, oh my God, it's like the intensity. I felt the intensity in this situation. It's like, you're gonna tell me there's like a fat woman that's taking on the line. This could easily play as a horror movie if they really wanted to. So they get this riddles about like there was 7 guys with 7 wives, something like that, and it's a little more detailed, but they gotta figure out the answer will be like 555-0001. The answer is number 1 to the riddle, and the guys like to you still want to F with him to some extent. He's trying to have some fun along this way of messing with John McClane. And it's like, oh, like, you took too long to answer the question. So, like, because it's like he's talking about like explosive in the trash can nearby the payphone. I was like, he's like they're pushing people like, there's a bomb, good, and then they nothing happens, and they go back to the payphone, and they hear this dude just laughing his butt off, and It's like this. It's like I didn't say Simon Says. So now he's giving another instructions about answering another payphone in the subway, and that's where they drop behind like the ambulance and everything like that. So, John tries to get on board this number 3 train, I believe, while Zeus finds the payphone. And all the while, because he had to jump the turnstile, which it is like, I don't know if it's like illegal. It's probably like a misdemeanor at the most, but he can't jump turnstiles. This cop that's nearby sees this, and of course, he's obviously got a shaky hand, and it's like, he has to answer the phone. And because it took too long, you still want to, Simon's going to set off like the explosive anyway. Well, no, it didn't take too long. It's just the fact that John still has to be next to him. They have to be together. And they can't deviate from that. And of course, people point out, it's like this shaky hand young cop, in any other circumstance would have shot, Zeus right away in that moment. Because how things tend to be with some cops. But John ends up finding the bomb on the train and tosses it out the back way, and it goes off, causes this big calamity that thankfully there was no casualties, but it was like just a few people that happened to be injured. But here's the thing. This will be like the second explosion that went off in New York in this film. By the first one that went off at the department store, the whole entire city should have been on high alert. Because especially after 9/11, after that stuff went down, I imagine everything was shutting down. The airports was shut down like crazy at the time. And it's like, this movie, you still seeing people going about their business like it's just a day-to-day thing. And it's like, no, everybody will be sending a lot of people home after that first one. So they're getting nursed up in the ambulance, and John asks, like, Zeus, what are the odds of us making there on time? It's like none. And John, theorizes that was going to go off no matter what we did. He wanted that to go off. We don't know why, but he wanted to to have that explosion to go off for a particular reason. But then John and Zeus get called into the van by the police captain, a couple of other New York detectives, and they're inside is a couple of FBI agents and one CIA guy. And they show John some pictures, and they ask him, like, do the name Peter Krieg mean anything to you? He's like, no. Well, how about Gruber? Simon Peter Krieg was born Simon Peter Gruber. He's Hans Gruber's brother. And it's like, wow. It's like, of course, you have to, when you got somebody like Alan Rickman, it only makes sense you get somebody of equal actor status to play, if you want to, play the brother. Now, of course, after this, when like Die Hard 4 came out, I was kind of half hoping that they, I think maybe be old hat if they could keep making every Die Hard villain related to the Gruber family. But it's like, I don't know, maybe the father of these guys or something like that. But anyway, they all come to an understanding, like, this guy, the reason he's doing all this because he's seeking revenge against the guy who killed his brother. And like, you would think something, a premise like this would be in the second film, But it's like it's kind of awesome and kind of a nuanced thing to make it like a, because you don't see this very often, to make it part of the story of a third film and not the typical thing like being in a sequel. So Simon's on the line again, and he already knows the FBI agents and the CIA agents in the car with him because he's spying from the rooftops. And he lets everybody know that he snuck a bomb in a random New York public school. And any attempts to evacuate or use police radios will result for that thing to just go off immediately. So, in order to find the code to disarm the bomb, John and Zeus have to go to this particular park in order to solve another riddle. And so now all the cops are scrambling, trying to avoid any mass panic and avoiding talking with any reporters because they don't want to cause a mass panic. So they go searching, like, I don't know how many, God knows how many public schools they're end up searching, because they're searching at random, but they all probably doing it, you know, as close to the same time as they possibly can. But what they could have done is just possibly, and somebody pointed this out, how about try to call in to all these schools and ask, have there been any weird random packages being dropped off at your school, or deliveries or something like that being dropped off at your school? They would definitely like narrow things down considerably, especially if you're doing it like in the past, you know, day or two, like from today on back for past 2 days, has there been any, you know, weird random deliveries? And that should probably narrow things down by maybe half. But then we get a nice little, just a long drawn out, like probably like 10-15 minute scenes with Jeremy Irons and his crew of flunkies and this barely speaking woman, Katya, who's just like reveling in the violence because she's slicing up some dude with her, you know, kumji knife. It's a curved bladed, you know, dagger. And they along with Ricky, who met up with this guy because they're under assumption that they're extra help from the FBI. So they end up going to the inside the bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, and they are at the same time breaking in order to steal a bunch of gold bars. And they have these dump trucks, these like 14 set of dump trucks carrying this crap ton of gold. And you get to see like his other machinations. You're really like, you know, spend some time with the bad guy, which you're just loving, by the way, because like, man, it's like him and Alan Rickman, it's like, yes, choose them to be brothers. Yes, it makes sense. And the fact that from the first film, Alan Rickman really like lays on the American accent thick with that, because as John points out at the end of the film, these two, considering that they're brothers, operate on this similar modus operandi. They both play at the whole fake American thing. Like, holy Toledo, somebody had some fun. That always stuck with me too. But you tend to forget this is Scar. So he Ricky ends up getting killed in this process, and the guy who did it stole his like badge number that comes into play a little bit later. And so you know what Simon's real plan is. And so Zeus and John finds this water park because one of the reels was asking, it's like what's that 4 legs and travels far? I was like, oh, it's an elephant, and you see the statue of an elephant at this little water fountain area, and you see the briefcase, which somehow miraculously wasn't touched by any of the park goers around here, especially a kid. But then these 2 set of jugs, and they have to solve, like, okay, there's a jug with 3-gallon jug, and there's a 5-gallon jug. Find a way to fill one of the jugs to be at exactly 4 gallons, place it on the scale on the briefcase, and it will disarm the bomb. But any ounce more or less will immediately activate the explosion. And like, this is a part where the whole racial thing really kind of gets laid on too thick, in my opinion, where it's like you got these 2 characters arguing, and understandably, because like, Zeus getting roped up into this mess, but John clearly is about to call him like a motherfucker, but Zeus cut him off before he could finish that sentence. Like, what you gonna call me? You were about to call me the N-word, weren't you? It's like, no, I was calling you an asshole. Like, but the way that line was gonna be delivered was gonna be the MF word. And like, you got John's like, what's wrong, Zeus? Did I oppress you somehow? It's like, you know what? You don't like me because I'm a white guy. You're a racist. I was like, what? But this kind of drags on a bit. But they finally focus, and they come up with like how to like fill up the 5-gallon jug with exactly 4 gallons, and they disarm it, and they have to bring the suitcase bomb with them because they can't leave it for some random kid to mess with it. And they nearly get caught off by the dump trucks flying by, and then after some running with some kids is robbing some kind of bodega, John comes to realization that as to why the explosion went off at the spot that they went off at, because it's near the Federal Reserve. And since every cop is putting all their manpower into searching all these schools, like, the one place that doesn't have a school is this spot. So John goes to the Federal Reserve to investigate while he has Zeus deliver the suitcase bomb to some nearby police officers. Unbeknownst to them, these police officers are not police officers. They're working for Simon in disguise. But Simon orders them to leave Zeus alone, and they'll just deal with John. So John walks in, and he's like being escorted by Simon's men under the pretense that they're working for the reserve. And he notices the one fat guy with Ricky's badge, and because earlier in the first act, and he bring up about like the lottery and foreshadowing about, you know, because half the cops play their badge numbers for the lottery, and of course John sees Ricky, because Ricky's the only one that gives out his badge number in front of everybody. So he sees Ricky's badge number there. Clearly something was wrong. And something was wrong. So, and it's like, honestly, when you look at the scene, please tell me I'm not the only one who thought about the Captain America scene in Winter Soldier. And it's like, God, have been like a hell of a thing. Because obviously this is like many decades prior to the MCU's creation in the first place. But it's like having like John McClane's like, before we do this, does anybody want to get out kind of situation? But he has this like, you know, he's pinning everybody down and shooting everybody out and make it out by the skin of his teeth. Because John McClane is like an everyman. He's not like super jacked up like Stallone or Schwarzenegger. This is you know, this is your dad's action hero. Or if your dad was an action hero. But Zeus sees like this pit, and having like, you know, you can easily point out, man, Zeus has an easy out. After this point moving forward, he has a complete easy out, but he still tags along and investigates, and he bumps into John as John finds his dead cop friend, and he realizes it's about heist, not about any kind of revenge plot. So they come to realize, okay, the next reels gotta take them to Yankee Stadium, because after the whole solving the puzzle with that elephant thing, it's like, you know, was half of 42, it's like 21. So that kind of leads them to the well, he later instructs Zeus to go to Yankee Stadium, even though he shouldn't be able to stroll on in to find this supposed clue. But they also got to figure out who was the 21st president, which is like I just had it. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Chester A. Arthur. Chester A. Arthur was the 21st president. And so John follows the dump trucks because stealing all that amount of gold will require like a lot of heft. So they track down where like these dump trucks was going towards to. It leads into some kind of tunnel that's under construction, and he got this, you know, very Super Mario Italian guy who is just like a run his mouth a mile a minute about tons of this random information. And a guy with this kind of like knowledge, because he probably reads a lot maybe, and just enjoy finding out new information, is feasible. But it's like, dude, it's like, what are you doing like driving trucks where you probably can put this knowledge into probably useful skills, or just at the very bare minimum going on Jeopardy or something? But he's the one that talking about, like, you know, Chester A. Arthur was the 21st president. So John, who somehow knows how to drive a truck, follows along the tunnel where once again, just like in the first film, take control of one of the enemies he took down and take their walkies while Simon's trying to check in. That's like, you know, repeat, like, you know, whoever the guy's name was, like Chester or something, like, Chester's dead. I repeat, Chester's dead. And like, what's going on, bonehead? Like, it's then Simon realized, okay, and his little partner in crime, this very lanky, stone-faced dude is like, I told you to kill him. And I love this. The way like Jeremy Irons delivered these lines is like it's so good, and because he's they mentioned how like Simon suffered from migraines, so he has this like aspirin he's taking, and he's like he walks out of there after hearing that comment. It's like, thank you, that is so helpful. So I just love the way that delivers. And then he meets up with those undercover cops that's working for him, takes the bomb briefcase to use to blow up like this sealed off wall of water, and John manages to get out of it through the skin of his teeth, but coincidentally bumps into Zeus along the way. And they had this little car chase shootout with more of Simon's men. McClane tucks them out, and they follow the dump trucks, and it's like, okay, they're being carried on to this massive boat. So they use the cable wire from this vehicle in order to try to lure themselves towards the boat that's coming by. Once they get on it, they end up getting captured by Simon. And it's like a funny exchange between Simon and McClane. It's like, because they thinking like, because here's another thing that kind of drags for me. I didn't really care for this part where they because they searching for these supposed bombing in the school. It turns out to be fake, because Simon's like, I may work for monsters, but I'm not a monster. It's like, I wouldn't blow up a school full of kids. That's not what I'll do. So clearly once they found this supposed bomb, it was fake. It happened to be in the school where these two little kids, they had an interaction with Zeus earlier in the film, and this is like a little side crap with them sneaking off because they're getting bored because they don't know what's going on for real, and they think this is some boring assembly, and they just want to play cards in one of the school classrooms, and it's dumb. It's like that every time. That's my biggest con out of this entire film, and just following along with this nonsense BS with these kids that I don't care about. It shouldn't even been like a part of this, like they should have been no more part of this film beyond what we saw in the first act when it's heading off to school. But it's supposed to add tension to the stuff. I know, but you can show them in the auditorium. But so far as them sneaking off to try to play cards, you didn't need all that. I don't care. That's like, it's already enough tension, the fact that that the supposed bomb is in this particular school that they're in. That's the only added intensity. It probably been even more tense, in my opinion, that if Zeus finds out that the school that the bomb was found in was at the school that he knew these two particular kids go to. So he will probably have more stakes to stay involved, where at a point in the line he can easily just dip out because he fulfilled his end of the bargain kind of situation. He just wanted to just be in it for the ride, despite his protest early on in the film. But if they add in the fact that, we found out where the bomb is in the school, whatever your name of the school is, and you can just have this like close up on Zeus's face, like, oh my god, I know some kids that go to that school. We gotta find this guy and put a stop to this, because like, the kids that I know was gonna get hurt. That would have added to that, but instead we got this useless card game scene. Anyway, but it turns out to be fake, and he's got this funny exchange between the hero and the bad guy, and then because he was about to call in to the harbor patrol, but they kind of put him on hold, and you had this like laugh exchange between the Simon and McClane, and John just like cuts it all short. It's like, you know, your brother was an asshole, and they just laugh again. It's like, yeah, you're right. You know, he was an asshole. But so they strapped him to these big containers filled with those chemicals that will mix in like 10 minutes. Apparently blowing up a bunch of the gold to try to ruin the economy of the US. But Zeus remarks is like, didn't you just say you didn't much like your brother? And Simon was like, there's a difference between not liking one's brother and caring about the fact that somebody threw him off a roof. And I want to really like note this particular scene, because the way it speaks to me is that, yeah, you can, it has no you have no problem. I have no problem with the fact that, hey, these brothers might have a falling out. They might have a disagreement with how they do things, because one is a kind of like a thief, and the other is more so kind of like a renegade ex-soldier. But they both in crime in one shape or another, and they might have some kind of falling out. Who knows? That's what I'm saying. Like a graphic comic about the world of Die Hard would have been, you know, very good, and just show like a particular comic about the life of the Gruber family and how like these two had like their falling out, but they have like still love for each other. And you can see through, like, you know, maybe it's just me, just like the cadence of Jeremy Irons and the fact that the way he delivered it, it's like there's a difference between not caring, not liking one's brother, and caring the fact that somebody threw him off a roof. Because at the end of the day, that's still his family that this cop killed. So in a way, he still wants his revenge, but if John somehow ends up surviving, doesn't really like care. He just got pretty much essentially want to get his licks in, if you can think about that. And it's like another funny delivery with John McClane, where it's like, you know, I just got one more thing to say to you. You got any aspirin? Because I got a really bad fucking headache. And it's like, I like this because on some level, Simon kind of likes John. It's like, you know what? Here, I got a bottle of a few left here. Yeah, he just gives him this bottle of aspirin. It's like, you know, it's like how he's gonna open it, you guys' hands tied. But the fact that that little level of courtesy is just, you know, kind of adds to the fun of making a great villain. So they managed to get loose after this little exchange between this little moment of like a heart to heart with John and Zeus, where it's like, you know, about the, you know, him and Holly's falling out, and Zeus just like, you know, look, you know, you probably have a chance if you just give her a call, because apparently just too much of a stubborn dude. And you can see how Holly and him get along, because they're two of the most stubborn people that you probably, like, you know, probably will come across. And I also want to remark how, like, kudos to the director not rehashing the same bad guys or same supporting characters that we already saw from the previous two films, because it would be kind of like, you know, old, probably getting old and stale. And Bruce Willis had strong because he was part of this, you know, the writing of the script and putting everything together. So he want to make sure it's not, you know, doing the same old thing. Because there's like a previous premise to this film that Willis didn't really care for, that they kind of toss out. Well, not toss out. It was later reused for, guess what? Speed 2 Cruise Control. And that was one of the most horrible sequels to incredible film that will ever have seen. So you can stand the reason why, you know, Bruce Willis had that story tossed out, because it's just Die Hard on a boat, which it is. So they kind of have to mix it up. That means like, can't have Polly no more. We also can't have that wormy, weaselly reporter showing up a third time, as well as we can have Carl Winslow showing up a third time trying to back John up, because he has a series of good cops backing him up in this film. So the boat ends up blowing up with these two men to escape from, and again taken care of by the cops and Harbor Patrol. And John gets bummed out because the fact that, like, this bad guy beat me. He beat me, and which is would have been like a wild idea, just to have like, oh my god, like somebody actually beat John at something, even though John didn't die, he still lost. But no, it's still like we still got at least several minutes into this movie, and with some encouragement from Zeus trying to call back Holly, he opens up the medicine bottle and sees like there's actually 2 aspirin capsules inside. He's like, some bitch actually did have aspirin, because it's the fact that like he gave me that bit of courtesy. Yeah, because he wasn't like, he wasn't, BSing. But as soon as you look underneath like the bottle, he sees like this name of this motel nearby, on the border between New York, US and Canada. And that's where this leads to John speculate, okay, they obviously had to be held up. Their operations have to be like started from somewhere nearby where they got this bottle. Felt like kind of like a long shot, but it pans out well. And they kind of realize that the boat didn't have this bunch of gold on it, because part of the Gruber MO is having a bunch of cops thinking that he's just some kind of anarchist or something that doesn't care about money. But no, it's like he does, and trying to fool you to look in one way while he's going off on another direction. So they found him, and John, as Simon and Katja is on the helicopter, John leads him away, and then he sees like this power line. He shoots it with this itty bitty pistol with only 2 shots in it, and it causes like the wires to get caught up on the helicopter, causing it to be dragged down and explode. And the movie ends with Zeus once again. It's like, give her another call, man. But that was Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance. An amazing film. And like I said, they probably should just stop right here. 4, as I remember, wasn't horrible, but was kind of bland. But I get that line of thinking, because they're trying to bring John McClane, a very 80s, 90s action hero, into like the 21st century. Well, yeah, the 21st century with like hacking and and computers and like a digital age. And it was like a decent concept in my opinion, where it's like, hey, how would somebody like John McClane, who's pretty much like a very 80s and 90s action hero that pretty much do things very analog, operate in like an action oriented film in like a digital age type of way? Because this is type of realm that John Wick will probably be more adept at, dealing with in this kind of realm. While I won't say put out the passion, but John McClane probably been like, he is lost. He had to get this another buddy, because John McClane always got to be teamed up with some kind of buddy in some kind of fashion. But this one's some kind of hacker nerd played by Justin Long, to help him along the way through this tech stuff. But like I said, it's very mid. But anyway, Die Hard 3 is very great, and that's where they probably should have stopped. But definitely worth a watch. It's so much fun. And like I said, Simon is very much like the Riddler, and like Jeremy Irons is phenomenal. And I don't think he's talked enough about in this type of movie villain reverence like he probably should be. Because him and his brothers should be like neck and neck. But maybe Gruber Hans being slightly above him, just slightly, because like Jeremy Irons could have easily done Hans Gruber if he probably wanted to. Because there's like symmetry on what you see Hans do and you see Simon do is very like, you know, there's some parallels. But anyway, leave a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know what you thought of Die Hard 3. And I will see you all in a few minutes as I cover my spoiler review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. See ya.